The Garmin InReach Mini 2. What is this? Why do we need one? So like everything I show on this channel, you don't really need any of it, but you kind of still want it. Basically, this is a satellite communicator. This will work pretty much on any corner of the Earth's surface. Corner? That'll keep the flat earthers happy. But yeah, so you can use this to communicate, send text messages. You can't do voice on this particular device, but you can send text messages, locations. You can use this as a navigator, and it also pairs with your phone as well. So you don't have to do everything on the tiny little display you've got here. But you can. You know, if you lost your smartphone, you can actually use this as a standalone device. That's cool. Now, it's also got this big red SOS button on it. That is actually a cover to stop you hitting that automatically, but under there is a button. Now, when you hit that, it will actually notify Garmin's 24/7 kind of emergency coordination system, and they will actually arrange emergency services, rescue, whatever your situation, they will try and help in that way. And it's interactive as well, so you can actually communicate back. If you've got broken fingers, you're not really going to be able to communicate. But basically, as soon as they receive that SOS call, they'll be able to help you, and they'll know your location as well, because this has built-in GPS. So the SOS feature alone is amazing, because, I mean, that could save your life if you were out doing something a bit kind of crazy, or you come off a bike somewhere really remote, something like that. You could actually be able to, you know, summon some help somehow. And remember, because this doesn't use a cellular network, it uses satellites, it will work even if there's no cell coverage or mobile phone coverage anywhere. So this will work at sea. So the satellite system this uses is called Iridium. It consists of 66 low Earth orbit, or LEO, satellites, and they cover the entire Earth's surface. So you can actually see on this illustration, which I nicked from Tech Minds channel, all of the satellites and how they're actually kind of moving and covering. So each kind of, you can see their coverage is basically like a circle, and they're all overlapping. So effectively, your little InReach Mini 2 will always be in range of a satellite. Now, this does mean these only really work outside. I mean, that's kind of fine, that's what they're designed for. But I will say the antenna on the top of here is actually pretty impressive, because I've managed to be able to send a text message from inside the house, albeit I was upstairs, top floor of the building, but I could actually get a message sent through. And also the first test that I did was actually whilst I was driving, texting whilst driving, not exactly, but it was in the car, and I was moving along, and I did wonder whether that would affect it, like, you know, Doppler shifts and all that sort of stuff. But no, it just literally worked straight away. It was funny actually, because I was on the way to see my friend. I had my phone with me, but something had happened to the service. So the only way I had of sending a message was actually to use the little InReach, and I did that using the app, because you can use the Garmin InReach smartphone app to send messages as you would like on a normal phone, and it relays out through the InReach Mini, which is super cool. There's actually two apps I'm using for the InReach Mini 2 at the moment. The Explore was the first one that I set up, and you know, it does basically most features you need to do. You can message from within there as well. And the other one is the Messenger app, which I've found really good, because it actually shows you how many messages you've got remaining on your plan. I'll come to that in a minute. It shows you lots of other stuff, and you can add contacts, and you can set up other features on there. So one thing I've learned about the way this handles messages is basically when you send a message from here, you can send it as a normal text message, and it will go to a normal phone, you know, just fine, just as if you were texting from your phone. Now, what happens is your message appears to come from a number which is allocated. It's like a temporarily allocated number, which means that the person that you've sent the message to can reply to that. It's still unclear how long that number stays persistent, but it doesn't stay persistent. So this doesn't actually have a mobile phone number allocated to it, you know, like a normal phone does. Now, that's not really a problem, because a lot of people that use these call it priming the pump. So basically, before you go on an adventure or an excursion, just send a message out to the numbers that you want people to be able to reply from. So then you're effectively, you know, priming the pump, and it will work that way. Now, there are actually a number of ways you can send a message to an InReach device. One of them, you can actually use a website to send messages to it. But the first one is obviously replying to a message that you've received from an InReach device. And the other way is, if you've got another InReach device, kind of goes without saying, you can send messages backwards and forwards between InReach devices. Love that. That's proper off-grid communications. The other one, the final one, is using map share. So you have to set this up. You have to share your location. It won't do this by default, sharing your web like location on the web under a specific link. you know, always a bit questionable for privacy and stuff, but you can do that, and it is, you know, it's, you know, fairly secure. No one would be able to guess that link. You know, it's got like a sort of code after the map share link. So you can share your location. You can also send messages to that web page in effect. So other people watching your progress, maybe you're going on like a mountain trip or something like that, and people want to, you know, other family members want to check, you know, what's happening there, and you can actually upload your location to that with a message, and those are called check-ins. So in theory, you could use a check-in, which you can set up, and you can actually have like a bunch of numbers on that check-in. When you hit check-in, people will get those text messages, you know, onto their phones. So that's another way of kind of priming the pump, so to speak. It handles messages a bit like email, so it will actually have to connect to a server to retrieve the messages. It's basically because obviously they don't want, you know, massive amounts of traffic going backwards and forwards across the satellite network. So the way these work is they actually check for messages periodically. You can see this is checked about 1 minute ago because I've just been playing with it. But basically, if you left that, you know, on the side, it would probably only do it like once every half hour or so. If you've actually got a phone connected by Bluetooth, which I have right now, you can actually check for messages very quickly, and it just kind of comes back and says, you know, there's no messages, or it just, you know, just goes back to that screen. If you actually disable Bluetooth on the phone, so if we just turn Bluetooth off on the phone so it can't connect to the app, what you see happen is you press OK, and then it's going to start using the satellites to check for messages. That is another thing. Even if you're standing outside and you're in direct kind of line of sight of the sky, you know, you still will find that this takes a little while to send messages, probably, I don't know, like 30 seconds. It's pretty reliable though. It will actually, you know, it will always send that message. I've never had one refused, but it just might take a little bit of time to actually get that message through. And it's like a two-way thing. It kind of sends and then receives and gets the acknowledgement that way. So I can reply to an email that was sent to my email address from my inReach by clicking on the link in that email, and then it just takes you to this form, and you can basically send that message, and then a few minutes later it comes through on the inReach. So I already mentioned that the inReach checks every hour for messages. It will check every hour if there's no messages, kind of no conversation going. But if there's a conversation going between text messages, so basically, you know, you text someone, it will check every 10 minutes for a reply. So that's quite a neat feature. It's kind of, you know, updating a bit more frequently. But there's nothing to stop you going into the actual device and checking for messages manually like you would send and receive an email. So it's a pretty nifty device. You've got loads of other bits and pieces on here, like you've got a compass, and you can actually access navigation, basic navigation. There's no maps or anything built into this. It's just literally like a breadcrumb trail, so you can track back if you're out and about. You can use this as like a, you know, get back to home type sort of system. You've also got an electronic compass on here, and obviously this lovely transflective display that you can see in bright sunlight. It's really, really nice. It reminds me of the really old, the kind of older Garmin GPSs. I've actually got one around here somewhere. It just looks really smart. And you've got GPS coordinate readouts and sort of, you know, grid square. You know, it's got some good basic GPS features, like track back as well. Battery life seems to be really good. It's down to 52%. It's been on about, I don't know, 2 days, something like that. So their claims of like 30 days might be a little bit kind of optimistic, but then I have been playing around with this quite a lot, and it does depend what you're doing with it. If you just left it kind of on the side for you know, for days on end with no tracking enabled and, you know, effectively hardly using it, it would probably last a pretty long time. And it has got USB-C, you'll be pleased to know. No micro USB here. Right, so how much does all this cost then? Well, the device itself you can get for about £300 now. I'm sure they were a lot more when I first started looking at these, but yeah, basically 300 quid for the device. I didn't think it's too bad for a satellite communicator. No, it doesn't do voice, but then, you know, satellite phones, which who really needs a satellite phone, put it that way, you know, unless you're sort of some sort of drug baron. They're thousands, so, you know, that can be really expensive. If you needed that sort of thing, then that's what you're going to use. But for this sort of thing, just messing around and having a bit of peace of mind, you know, this sort of thing is really good. Of course, that isn't the end of the story, because you've got to actually get a subscription, and at the moment this is the one that I'm on. It's actually the $14.99 one on a monthly plan, and this is done on the Freedom plan, which is like a 30-day commitment. You can suspend it any time. It's pretty good, really. You get 10 messages, which is pretty poor. But realistically, you're not going to be using this to text, you know. You're not going to use, this is the most I'll probably ever use it, just testing this sort of stuff out, and then occasionally maybe, you know, from on a plane or something. I don't actually know whether you're allowed to do that, but that would be pretty cool. Anyway, it's a backup messaging system, and you also, with the advantage of having that SOS feature. The SOS feature doesn't really cost anything. They don't charge you for that, which is good of them. But you do need to have a service to actually, you know, get access to that. So yeah, this is the one I'm on, safety, unlimited SOS. Hopefully that's not going to be the case. Good thing about this one is check-in messages are unlimited, so you can actually send messages for free. If anybody replies to those messages, then you're going to get charged. But then, you know, you only, what is it? Weather, I mean, £1 for weather is pretty crazy. Each message is 50p, so we're back to like, I mean, 1980s with message costs. But then, you know, that's only if you run out of your 10, and then if you do, you can just upgrade it if you wanted to. If you wanted to have seamless messaging, you could probably, you know, go to one of these ones like this Expedition. Does that give you? Yeah, unlimited. So you can run like unlimited, and if you were going on like a, you know, a big trip or something like that, you could just pay that 1 month, and you'd have complete, you know, the ability to message. If you had multiple devices, that would be really good as well, because you could just, yeah, basically communicate without using any cell network at all, if you were going somewhere that didn't have that. But, you know, as we've seen, if you've got an internet connection, like when I was turning that Bluetooth on and off, it's using the phone's internet connection, then you can use that messaging system, you know, using the cellular network. It's not going to cost you anything. It's only when a message goes over the satellite it's going to cost you. So yeah, food for thought. But I think it's a cool little device if you've got a really active lifestyle and you're getting out and about into dangerous situations. That SOS button is, you know, could be worth its weight in gold. You know, there's not really anything else on the market. Okay, we have got the iPhone 14 now, which has got the satellite SOS messaging capabilities, which is pretty good. I mean, I think every phone should probably have that. But obviously that won't do two-way messaging to anything other than SOS. So, you know, this device is still in a league of its own. Anyway, guys, hope you've enjoyed this one. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you next time.